Good afternoon, everybody, whoever is on. I'm sorry we had some technical difficulties, and we are going to be starting now. I'm going to just set myself up over here. Hope you can see me and hear me, and I will get started, and we will hopefully have a meaningful meeting. Again, I'm sorry for the delays. So we are talking about living in a perfectly imperfect world. And in doing so, as we all know, we found out the hard way, having coronavirus sprung on us in a very sudden manner. And you've probably seen so many people talk about it and so many things said in terms of opinions and so forth and so on. So contributing something unique and a little different is not an easy task, but I want to try to look at the bigger picture, how Judaism perhaps tries to tackle this whole issue in general, dealing with these types of surprises and challenges in life, which catch us off guard sometimes. And sometimes we make our own bed and we get ourselves into situations which are difficult. Obviously, in this situation, none of us made this bed, and we were all in a situation where we are trying to adjust to a very big change in our lives. So I want to share with you a wonderful experience that I had many years ago when I was in yeshiva in 770. It's been well publicized, so you might have heard about it, but the experiences was with a group of handicapped soldiers who were invited to come to 770 in order to be able to hear the Rebbe speak to them. And at the time, they were very, I should say, just kind of touring and coming with some anticipation as to what are they going to this Hasidic Rebbe for. But they all left tremendously enlightened. And quite honestly, as one of the yeshiva boys who was upstairs watching down from upstairs, I also was quite touched by this whole experience, and especially by the Rebbe's words. And for me personally, it meant a lot because it stuck with me. And years later, when we had our first son, and he was born with cystic fibrosis, and 13 years later, he passed away. So the Rebbe's message was a very meaningful and personal message, which helped me get through my own personal challenge in life. And the message that the Rebbe gave to these soldiers was the following. He said that in life, we have a body and a soul, and we are alive through that marriage which takes place. If the soul leaves the body, the marriage is over. And the Rebbe said that sometimes when the body, for whatever reason, whether it be at birth or whether it be later on in life through an experience, whether it be a war or something else, when that body experiences a setback. So the Rebbe said that the soul automatically gradually evolves or learns or is able to overcompensate for the drawbacks that are by nature in the body. And the Rebbe said that sometimes it's like a scale. You know, if you have one part goes down, the other part goes up. So the Rebbe said by definition, these soldiers have a very special soul. Their soul has risen to a very high level. And as a result, instead of being called handicapped, they should be called mitzionim. Mitzionim referring to them being exceptional individuals. And they all left very uplifted by this message. And the Rebbe said many other things to them, but I want to really kind of bring this up because I think it's very relevant to our discussion, that sometimes things do happen to us in life. And it's very easy to have a knee-jerk reaction. And Hashem, God, created these knee-jerk reactions. It's just part of human nature. But part of our purpose is to catch ourselves from going forward and investing in those knee-jerk reactions. Because very, very often, these knee-jerk reactions just give us a sense of helplessness, of hopelessness, of really being a person. 1 second, I just want to turn off my phone over here, of being a person who's a victim. And we're going to go into this and talk about it. So we have this idea of perfection and imperfection. So let's look a little bit at what this is all about. Of course, the perfection idea we get from God. God is perfect. We believe in a perfect God, an all-powerful God, a God who is able to do anything and controls the world and creates it and so forth and so on. And we have this idea of imperfection, which is a reality we see around us, a reality which we all know only too well, even before coronavirus, is filled with imperfection, challenges, sometimes terrible, terrible, evil actions, which just emphasize the difficulties that we have living in this world. And there's a source behind these two things. Number one, of course, the perfection is coming from God, but the perspective that we take towards the imperfection has different roots to it. And I want to explain what those roots are. And they really are roots which have been part of the struggle of mankind throughout history, so much so that religions are based on different approaches because of their different understandings of what this imperfection, this negativity in life is all about. So starting off with Judaism, Judaism takes a perspective as follows. There's a perfect God, but this God wanted to create an imperfect world. Why? God could have created a perfect if he wanted to, but nevertheless, God did create a perfect world for the angels. They have no problems. They're standing there, sitting there, whatever they're doing, they're praising God. They have no free choice. They have no evil to deal with. They're perfectly okay where they are. But God didn't satisfy himself with creating this world of angels. And God, so to say, lowered the bar and came down from the angel world to the human world, to the real world, to the world that we live in, which is a mixture of many imperfections. Although we have lots of beautiful things around us, we live in a garden of world, which is so incredibly beautiful in many ways. But unfortunately, mankind has kind of changed the scenery, whether because of just our misuse of our resources, whether because of our mistakes, our lack of knowledge. Let's not get into all the possible causes. And as a result, we have a very imperfect world. Now, this came from the Chet Eitz Hadas, the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is going back a few thousand years. So God, at this time, had Adam and Eve. They ate from this tree. Chava was pushed into it, so to say, or influenced by the snake. God created all of this, and he started this process of them eating from the tree, rebelling against God, and as a result, being kicked out, punished, sent away from the Garden of Eden. Now, the question comes up is this. Did this act, this event of the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, did this happen on Friday or on Sunday? Now, that might seem like a minor question to you, but really it's at the crux of really the difference between Judaism and Christianity to a certain degree, and also how we deal and how we view these imperfections in life. Let me explain. The view of life that looks at the world as God created a perfect world because God is perfect and the world is created in God's image. So therefore, as a perfect world, it was great through that first Shabbos, no problems whatsoever. What happened? Adam and Eve, who were created on a Friday afternoon, they came along on Sunday or Monday, Tuesday, whenever they did this, they messed up, they ate from the tree, and they created that sin. They got punished, they got sent out, and we're paying for that sin ever since, because they were the ones who brought imperfection into the world. Now, we look at it that sin took place on Friday. What's the difference? Difference is very important because on Friday, God was in the sixth day of creation. God, the perfect one, was creating this world, created Adam and Eve, created them with all this goodness around them, but also created the snake and also created Eve's ability to be able to be influenced by the snake, eat from the tree, thereby internalizing this evil that now became mixed in with the good within her as a human being, gave it also to Adam. So Adam now became this mixture of good and evil from within. And then they made all the choices that they made, got expelled from the Garden of Eden, had the punishment, went down a spiritual level from the high spiritual level that the Garden of Eden was on, and the rest is history. So, but we see something very interesting here. We see that sixth day of creation was part of the creative process. God was creating evil. God was creating sin. God was creating punishment. God was creating free choice. Those were necessary parts of the whole of creation in order to make the creation tov ma'od, very good, as Hashem said concerning his observation of what he had just created on the sixth day. So that's where we get it from. That's the difference between how we look at all these imperfections in life. Do we look at these as some type of mistake, which is against God's will, or that there's some kavana, there's some intent, there's some plan, some purpose on God's part for why God created this as part of his creation and put it into the world to be part of it? So we take another step and we look at another paragraph in the process of creation, the very last paragraph in the story of the 6 days of creation. And that paragraph deals with God says that now I completed the heavens and the earth. And the very last 4 words of that paragraph, which we recite every Friday evening, and we recite it also at the Kiddush after services. He says, Asher bara Elokim la'asos, that God created to do. So our sages ask the question, wait a second, he created it. Why did he create it to do it? Or otherwise it could be translated la'asos, to make it. And they answer the following, that God created the world as a imperfect world and created in such a way that we should do the la'asos. L'sakein, we have to fix the world. We have to repair that descent, that spiritual descent that took place, that Adam and Eve brought about. We repair that and bring the world back to its state of purity and even higher than that. The descent for the sake of a great ascent. And this is the story of the history of mankind, is how we all human beings, but Jews in particular, have this role, these many, many mitzvahs to be able to fix this world and repair it, heal it, elevate it, refine it, and do whatever we can to make it better. So this is a little bit of the background of how we look at the perfect and the imperfect, and how they are able to sort of say, kind of mix together in a certain degree. So how we deal with these imperfections really is going to determine to a great degree what kind of person we are. This is more than just a philosophical or theological discussion, because this really describes who we are as a human being. Are we the type of person who is easily swayed by obstacles in the road, or do we go and try to overcome those obstacles? Are we a person who's easily set back because of life circumstances? Do we take life's problems and feel like a victim? Are we by nature very sensitive to any imperfections that happen in our life? Or are we a person who is able to sort of say, I would like to call it the flow mode. We're able to go with the flow. We're able to go with what's happening. And that's what we're going to talk about, because that's what's relevant to us specifically in this situation also, of how we're dealing with our present matzav in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're facing and that we have surrounding us. And some of us are very affected by it on a personal level in terms of either having it, having had it, or having had losses in our family and experiencing deep grief as a result of it. So grief is a whole different ballgame, as I can testify to personally. But for the most of us that are not dealing with this intense emotions as a result of what happened, we can perhaps still be able to have a aha moment and build up a relationship to this event that's happening around us that will help us to be able to rise to the occasion, as we say, because our moods are something and our attitude is something that is not determined by the weatherman, and it should not be determined by just events that are happening around us. As I said before, that we are the ones who are determined, not our knee-jerk reactions. We should determine how we wake up in the morning, how we feel, how our happiness level is, what our ability is to be able to live day to day. Because if we're just going to live as a ball in a pinball machine or survive on knee-jerk reactions, and again, it's perfectly human, perfectly normal to live that way, but it's not what Judaism wants us to do. It's for sure not what the Rebbe taught, for sure not what the Chassidus teaches, to work on the basis of knee-jerk reactions or just being taking on attitudes that are to be expected. Well, this happens, so therefore I'm not happy. Or this happens, so I have an excuse not to do this or not to do that. That's not the way we should really be trying to rise to the occasion under these circumstances. But with all that said, the question still is, what does it mean that something can be perfectly imperfect. Okay, we understand the perfect, we understand the imperfect, but perfectly imperfect, that's already kind of like a whole different ball of wax. So how do we jump on that? And for that, I want to start off by highlighting 3 prayers that we say every morning for those of us who do the morning prayers and the morning blessings that we say every morning. The first is the Moda Ani. Moda Ani Lefnecha, which the Rebbe in fact said was his favorite prayer of the whole prayer book. Moda Ani Lefnecha, I thank you, O God, that you return my soul, that you have faith in me, that I'm going to have another day. We wake up in the morning, there's this excitement that the day is starting, that God is here with us, that God has invested in us, that God trusts us. Great is your faith in us, even that we are going to be your partner in this process of trying to perfect and improve upon this world that you gave us to live in. That's prayer number 1, which creates a certain platform that we can build on. Prayer number 2, there are, I think, 18 blessings that we say in the morning blessings. One of them is the following, which you might pass over very quickly, but it's such a powerful prayer. It says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei goveh, who prepares the steps of man. In other words, after I say Modani in my bed, the I don't know, 500,000, I mean, these days it's probably a lot less than usual, but whatever amount of steps I take during the day, being that I'm quarantined in the house, those steps are mapped out by God. Hamechim mitzadei goveh. Wow, that's a powerful statement. That I am really connected to Hashem in a way that my steps during the day are guiding me to be able to go to those places I need to be to accomplish what I need to accomplish on this day. So that's number 2. Number 3 is we say another Yehi Ratzon later on in the morning blessings. And we ask God that he should not bring us to a test. Al tuviyeni li'yadei nisayon. Please, God, you're taking me by step by step. I'm going to go where you send me. I'm going to have control over my attitude. I'm going to have free choice where I go. I'm going to be able to put more energy, less energy into situations. But the scenario and the props of the stage that I'm going to be seeing, I really don't have that much control over. But I'm just asking you one favor, please. Don't test me. Don't. But you know what? When we're saying to God, please don't test me, we're also admitting to the fact that if God wants to, he could test us. And he can test us in a variety of ways. He could test us in terms of something very small or something very large, God forbid. And we ask him, just don't test us. But it's not like we want to have a boring life. It's not like we're looking and saying to God, I want a life that's totally in control. I want the radar screen to be totally flat. I want everything to just fall into place. I want perfection, and I want to be now and here and today. That's really not what we're asking when we say, Al tuviyeni li'yadei nisayon. We know that God knows us best. God knows what we are here for, what we're meant to accomplish, what we're here to refine, to elevate, to be able to change over and be able to affect in our lives. And hamechim mitzadei goveh means that God is taking us to those points where we are meant to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And that's why it's so important that we have this bitachon, that we have this trust in God, that God is taking us on those steps. And if we do face a test, then that's what we'll have to deal with. So we believe in Hashem. We believe that these steps are there for a purpose. And this is really the belief in Hashgacha Pratis, in divine providence. Divine providence is not just a very general term that we say that God is out there somewhere and he's kind of overlooking everything. Pratis means detailed. And when God talks detail, he's talking detail. He means he's really looking into detail. Because as the Baal Shem Tov explained, as we say in prayer, in the blessing before the Shema, twice, and as the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, explained in great depth, that God is renewing the process of creation, not only daily, but as they explain, it's really hourly, by minute, by second, and by millisecond. That God's creation of the world is not like a one-time thing God did in the 6 days of creation, but it's really an ongoing creation, just like the sun radiates its heat and its light on a millisecond to millisecond basis, God, so to say, radiates also in a similar way the whole of creative energy to be able to make the world what it is now. And this is a very powerful way of looking at God, because it creates also a very personal relationship between us and God, in terms of seeing that every single second God is directing the show. He hasn't left the cockpit. He's still there. He's still directing why we have to go through this COVID-19 that we're going through in every detail of our lives. I want to read for you a Hayom Yom that the Rebbe wrote many years ago, back in 1943. And this is a collection, for those of you who are not aware or not familiar with Hayom Yom, it's a collection of many sayings, each one per day, to uplift us and to help us gain greater insight into Hasidic perspective of life's many challenges. And in this Hayom Yom, which the Rebbe talked about on concerning Cheshvan 28, the 28th day of the month of Cheshvan, the Rebbe says as follows: the concept of divine providence is this: not only are all particular movements of the various creatures directed by providence, and not only is that providence itself the life force and maintained existence of every creature. Why don't we repeat that? Because it's so important. In other words, the providence and the life force are one and the same. It's not like God is creating the world and then kind of overlooks it to make some adjustments as to how he wants it to look. That the life force is directed by the will of God in terms of figuring out what do we need in order to experience enough today to make today a worthwhile day, to make it a day that is fulfilling what our purpose is for being alive on this day, for saying Moda Ani in the morning. So they're one and the same, the Rebbe is saying here. But even more so, the particular movement of any creature is in general terms related to the grand design of creation. The aggregate of all individual acts brings us to completion of God's grand design in the mystery of all of creation. Heavy stuff here. Ponder this, the Rebbe continues. If the swaying of a blade of grass is brought about by divine providence and is crucial to the fulfillment of the purpose of all of creation, how much more so with regard to mankind in general and Israel, the people close to him in particular, and I will add on to that, in particular you, and particular me, that each one of us are playing a key role in this grand plan of divine providence that is all part of the creation that God is creating on an ongoing basis. Here's another very interesting note concerning divine providence, also from Hayom Yom, from the third day of Elul. Whoever has faith in individual divine providence knows that man's steps are established by God, as we talked about, that this particular soul must purify and improve something specific in a particular place. For centuries, or even since the world's creation, that which needs purification or improvement waits for this soul to come and purify or improve it. The soul, too, has been waiting ever since it came into being for its time to descend so that it can discharge the tasks of purification and improvement which are assigned to it. So this is a springboard. This last Hayom Yom is a springboard for understanding how the events of our day, the challenges we face, the problems that we have, are all custom made for us. They are all part of the autobiography that we have in terms of what we need to accomplish. If it's a permanent challenge, something that we have in our family as a family member, part of our body, as in case of the handicapped soldiers, whether it be something more temporary, which hopefully this COVID-19 is going to be a temporary challenge, whatever it is part and parcel of what we need to accomplish. So with that in mind, I want to share with you a powerful statement from the Rebbe to a lady who wrote a letter to the Rebbe. And if you remember anything from this talk, hopefully it will be this talk, this answer that the Rebbe gave her. She said to the Rebbe, Rebbe, I have so many problems. What can I do? And the Rebbe said to her, you don't have any problems. you have challenges. You don't have any problems, you have challenges. Problems mean that there's something there that for some reason, kind of came from left field, fell into your lap, and now it's a problem. Or we're looking backwards and comparing the way life was then to the way life is today. This is a problem. No, we're not supposed to be looking at life that way. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's perfectly natural, but it's not the way we should be looking at life. How should we be looking at life? All of those situations, all those imperfections that come to my attention, that come to my lap, that come into my life, those are challenges. Those are there because I have the ability to do something about it. I have the strength, I have the inner grit to be able to really accomplish something every single day. Whether it be that I take on one challenge, or I take on many challenges, I take on small challenges, large challenges, of course, that's an individual decision. And that's something that perhaps you will go to your mashpia or to a mentor, to an advisor, to a therapist, to a parent, to a friend, to somebody to be able to discuss which challenges to really focus on. But nevertheless, they're all challenges. And even those challenges or those quote unquote problems that we aren't taking on now, when we look at them as challenges, we don't feel necessarily weighed down by them. We don't feel that they are there to really give us this knee-jerk reaction of depression, of hardships, of heaviness, of difficulty, struggle to be able to be happy with our life and to be b'sameach bechelko, to be happy with our lot, because we realize that there's something more to it. And I want to just close off with a couple of interesting tidbits, which I hope will add perspective to this. There's a story from many years ago how Neshei Chabad had gone to visit Detroit for a convention. And on their way back, they were at the airport in Detroit, and there was a terrible storm, and all flights were canceled. So the head of the Neshei Chabad, the women's organization at that time, called up 770. They wanted to let the Rebbe know, what's going on, and asked for a blessing. So they told Rabbi Chodakov, the Rebbe's secretary, it was late at night already, told him that we're stuck in Detroit. And can you ask the Rebbe for his blessing? So Rabbi Chodakov spoke to the Rebbe, got back to the ladies and said, the Rebbe wants to know, what does the word stuck mean? What's that mean? And she thought perhaps the Rebbe didn't know what the English word stuck meant, so she started to explain what does stuck mean. But Rabbi Chodakov quickly corrected her. Say, no, the Rebbe understands the meaning of the word stuck, but the Rebbe doesn't understand what it means that a Jew can be stuck in a place. You're in a place because there's a purpose for being in that place. There's a reason for being there. You have something to accomplish there, and that's why you're there. It's not that you're stuck. So it's not a problem, it's a challenge. Going into a different story, a very interesting story in which I'm not going to go into the whole story, but basically what it comes down to it is, let's say for anybody who watches a movie, if you had a movie with no challenges, no problems, no obstacles, it was just like a dead line, what kind of movie would that be? Nothing. Nobody would watch it, nobody interested, nobody would even make a movie that had that kind of script. Is that really what we want our life to look like? We want our life to look like I controlled everything. I was able to maintain status quo. I was able to do everything in a way that it's just going to be regular. I don't know. And I think that we have to reconsider, especially, thank God, as a result of so many of the changes that are going on in our life now. So many people are reconsidering certain standard parts of their life. They're reappraising their life. They're reappraising their relationship with God. They're reappraising their ability to be able to perhaps stop all these knee-jerk reactions or all these status quo things that just kind of came naturally and came because that's just the way we were used to, or that's the way we were brought up, and take control of their life in a way of being able to create their own attitudes and create their own nature, and to be able to be in touch with their own feelings and their own family and their own children and the things that really make that are important to them, and to really connect to perhaps a purpose in life. What's the purpose? Why this is all going on? Why am I in these circumstances? And what can I do to make my life better and better for other people also, especially for those people who are on the front lines, or those people who are essential workers, what can I do to make this world a better place? So people are thinking a different way, and all of these talks that all these rabbis and rebbitzins and other people give to teach and share wisdom from the Torah is all that we should have more and more tools to be able to slowly have that aha moment that we hope we'll have, that will basically help us to evolve in a new direction, to grow in a new direction, to tap into something within us that's going to be able to help us to really connect on a different level. So in conclusion, basically, when we can accomplish this, when we can align ourselves with the feeling that Hashem is really running the world, and that the details of my life are really part of that script that Hashem is for why my soul came into this world, that I need for whatever reason, and sometimes it's a very hard thing to swallow, but I need to experience certain things in my life. And these imperfections are custom made for me to have to go through them and be the better for it. I think that's a much healthier attitude than the knee-jerk reactions, which might say, I'm a victim, this is terrible, I don't like this at all, I want to get out of here, this is not fair, why did God do this to me? Doesn't go, doesn't fly. So I hope and I pray that we should all be able to really rise to the occasion, to be able to really dig deep and to really kind of take an adjustment on our head as far as once and for all accepting Hashem in our life, walking with Hashem, taking those steps right from the bed and realizing that everything is happening to us is really coming from on high. And I think it'll be liberating. I think it'll be uplifting. And I know that it will help us to reach a new state of happiness, which I hope and pray will really, really take us the next step. All the best. And I hope that if you haven't yet, you'll register for my class, which is just finishing up on Chabad.org, which is talking about purpose. It's called The Paths to Purpose. We're finishing up the 3rd and 4th class. And if you're really interested in more about purpose, my new book, which is The 8 Paths to Purpose, is available on Amazon. And purpose is something that has a lot of dimensions and a lot of topics in it. So I hope you'll be able to pursue it a little bit more. In the meantime, may God be with you, and hopefully we'll see you on another Facebook Live some other time. Amen.